Hey, how's it going, Dad?
Oh, I'm doing good. How about you?
All right.
You ready for another exciting podcast? Are you ready for another exciting podcast?
Yeah, well, we've got some, thanks to some amazing folks that gave. I think they prefer to remain anonymous, but we got some upgraded equipment here. Look at this. We got 3 camera angles.
Yeah.
So
hopefully the commentary will match the quality of the tech stuff, maybe.
if nothing else, it'll be pleasant to watch.
We may have to up our game.
Hey, so you turned 70.
I did.
A few days ago.
A couple days ago, yes.
And one of the themes, actually probably the major theme of this podcast, is talking to you about stuff I've learned from you. So I want to ask you a question now, reflecting back on your 70 years. The first question, I want to ask a couple of questions, because I think one of the wisest things you can do is ask people down the road, learn from their mistakes, right?
Yeah, okay. As though I'd made some. 1 or 2.
Well, you have,
Anyways.
I'm not a mistake. But so here's the first question.
Okay.
You're you're about 25 years ahead of me, but I want to ask you 30 years ago, what do you know now that you wish you would have known 30 years ago?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, you gave me a little heads up on this one.
I did.
So, because I thought, and it's a good thing you did, because I got to thinking about it. I thought, man, I would think of something that, well, it would have been helpful if I'd known that. But then all of a sudden I realized I couldn't have known that. Somebody could have told me it. I could have read it in a book, but there's knowing it, and then there's knowing it. There's reading it in a book, but there are things I couldn't have known without actually doing it. For example, one thing I thought of is well, it would have been really helpful if I'd understood your mother better, if I'd known more about her and known more of how. But I realized that's the kind of thing it's an ongoing process. I'm still trying to figure her out in many ways. And so it's not something you could know and then boom, I know it. A lot of the stuff, it seems to me, you just kind of have to experience it. It's kind of like in Spanish, saber or conocer. You can know it in your head, but to really know, to experience, to
be familiar with it
is what really is what makes it where you really know it. So I couldn't come up, but I did come up with some things. I couldn't really come up with some things.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a politician answer.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
The things that you need to know are only known by coming to know them.
And once you know them, they're very knowable.
Yes.
But prior to knowing them, you can't know them.
One particular politician comes to mind, but let's move along. Yeah.
So, but I did think of some things. I thought, but there are some things. I think one of the reasons that I couldn't look back is I had some great mentors. Nobody really specifically intentionally took me aside and mentored me, but I watched people. I watched people who seemed to be successful in what they were doing, and I took notes, not writing them down, but I said, I got to remember that. So as I was trying to think of things I wish I'd known earlier, I did think of some things that I picked up earlier that have been guiding principles in my life. A lot of them are little sayings that I heard or little things here and there. And like one of them that I think has probably been a very big guiding principle. I heard somebody say years ago, so I don't have anything original, but I heard somebody say years ago, nobody on their deathbed has said, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. And I realized from that, man, I need to keep my priorities straight. What is really going to matter when I'm on that deathbed, which I'm getting closer to every day, but guess what? So are you. We all are. We're all getting closer there every day. And I just realized to put an emphasis upon the family, put the priority on the family, because I got this friend, and he's always concerned about what's his legacy going to be? What will people think of him when he's gone? And I always want to say to him, man, you got to realize people aren't going to think of you when you're gone.
They'll move along.
No matter how important you are in your business, when you pass away, they will replace you. And a year down the road, they go, hey, you remember what's his name? The only people that are going to miss you and the only people that are going to think about you down the road are going to be your family. So what is it you're depositing into them, and what is it you're investing into them? And I guess I picked that up early, and I've always tried to put the family as a priority, because I realized those are the ones that are going to really matter in the long run. Make
so
sense?
You learned that early on. What's
Yeah.
something you've learned 30 years in, so like after you're 40?
I've learned that was a pretty good advice. That was pretty good counsel.
So you're saying living it out?
Yes, proved the wisdom of it. Because at that point in time, I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. And so I just did it, put a priority on it. and I've seen the value of it to come back into my life, the richness of the relationship I have with you guys, like this right here, this podcast right here. I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun, but it's fun because we have a good relationship, and to have that relationship with your kids. And I think a lot of that had to do with putting a priority on them, not on finding my what would you say, value or worth in what I did in my business or my job. And God's blessed that too. I think, it's like if you line your priorities up with God's priorities, he takes care of the other things as well. Because, I mean, if you look back on it, I've got an awesome sounding resume. I mean, when I think about it, I know it's just me, so it's, well, big deal. But, founded 3 mission agencies. I've been a pastor. I've helped restore a church that was going through difficult times and restored that, and, pioneered a church. And, the resume sounds really amazing, but it wasn't anything I really could take credit for. But I put the focus, I tried to get God's priority being focus on the family.
Yeah.
And he's taking care of all those other things as well. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing has changed in the last 30 years. I got one for you. I think you're more self-aware now than you were 30 years ago.
Well, that's because you've messed me up. I used to be very happy in life and just going through it, looking at the butterflies and bumblebees. And you've made me kind of think more about self-awareness.
I think in the last, even I've just watched you even in the last 10 years, which is a testament to you, because a lot of people get to a certain age and like, well, I am what I am, and you just got to take it as it is. What I've seen you do really well is you're learning personality things. You're learning, Enneagrams or Myers-Briggs, and you're kind of looking into those. And whenever I'll bring up something, you'll ask about it. You'll say, what is that? And you'll go explore it, and then we'll talk about it later. So I think the self-awareness piece is something you didn't have 40 years ago. But what's an interesting thing I've observed about you is that, yes, you have kind of, people are always like, your dad must be such a visionary. I'm like, if he is, he's a reluctant one who stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Because you never really sought to do, these massive, huge things. But you did seek for, and again, this is a testament to you. When you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, even if you're not super self-aware, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Yeah.
But I've seen in the last few years, you become a lot more self-aware and kind of realize some things. Oh, I am that way. I didn't realize that. And maybe it would have been helpful to learn them earlier on. But what's your take on that journey over the last, I've seen it over the last 10 years, but maybe that's because I was just paying attention for the first time.
Yeah. Well, no, I think too, some of that has become a number of years ago. I just realized, my goodness, if you do not keep up, you become irrelevant and just you a decoration on the shelf very fast. Because I can remember when computers first came out. Hey, I can remember way back then, and I can remember people saying, "Well, I'm never going to learn a computer. I'm never going to do it." I'm thinking, man, if you do not, you are going to be, it's not like a passing fad.
Right.
You had better get with this thing, man, because this is where it is. And it's kind of that way with everything. I just kind of because I like people and I like to relate to people, I realize if I'm not up on Enneagrams or whatever, whatever you just mentioned, that one as an example, if this is what people are talking about, I want to be able to be in the conversation. So some of it's kind of self-preservation. I want to learn about that. I want to figure out of that, because I realize if I'm not, then pretty soon I'm going to be sitting in the corner, just an old guy sitting in the corner and doesn't know what's going on. And so
is that self-preservation or is that wisdom?
Well, maybe it's wise to preserve yourself. Maybe it's wise to stay alive, and stay active in it. And so
I would call that wisdom.
Okay, we'll call it wisdom.
All right, next question. What's something you were, and this is a challenge with him because you don't realize, again, the self-awareness thing, you don't worry about much, but you do worry about stuff, but it shows up in weird ways. What's something you were really concerned about many years ago that now that you look at it, you're like, wow, that worked out. Like,
okay,
maybe I didn't really need to be that worried about that.
Well, again, I'm going to sound like a one-string guitar, but my biggest concerns were always that my kids would grow up and be passionate followers. They'll start crying. Passionate followers of the Lord Jesus, because I figured everything else, will work out. If they love the Lord, and if they're serving Him, then I'm content, and that's worked out.
It has.
But that was like a big, that's probably the only thing I really, and I wouldn't say I was concerned, like worried about, but it was the only, I felt like if I failed in that area, then what did anything else matter? I could be a big success in business. I could be a big success, have a great resume. Who cares if my kids aren't passionate about the Lord? And I hate to say that because I know there's so many people who are listening whose kids aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot even imagine the grief of that. And I just would say, man, do not give up because you're not dead yet. They're not dead yet.
Mm-hmm.
I heard a story. I can't really vouch for it. Don't know that it's true, but they asked George Mueller, great man of faith. Somebody told me he had 5 kids and 4 of his kids were serving the Lord. And he said, so what about the 5th one? And he said, oh, he will. And he goes, well, how do you know? He says, because I'm praying for him.
Mm.
And the story goes, hey, look it up, let me know if it's true or not. The story goes that kid, even when Mueller died, he was still in rebellion against God. At the funeral, he recommitted his life to Jesus.
Wow.
Whatever happened or what. So, there's always hope, and you trust the Lord in that. Because again, ultimately, it's not our parenting. Here we go. Everything leads to parenting. I've decided life is parenting. But it's not really our parenting that makes the determination. It has some impact on it, but ultimately, it's the life we live and God that's going to grab those kids' hearts and draw them back.
So that's an interesting one. You're talking about everything leads to parenting, because I am getting more and more convinced as I observe my 9-year-old daughter that every adult is just a 9-year-old in a grown-up body.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's why I think starting in children's ministry helped me so much, because when I began preaching, I began to realize you just make it simple.
Yeah.
People's is people's, and we get bigger, but
the stuff you want is, they're have a bigger price tag usually, but as you get older, but yeah, it's the same stuff you want. So with that said, one of my favorite Zen sayings is, in the beginner's mind, there are many options. In the master's mind, there are few. Okay. So they always talk about going back to beginner's mind, like as a kid. Like, what do you see now as you're getting older? Do you go, I think this is still, like, are there certain things that you're saying, this is still possible, even though it feels like I'm getting older? I didn't warn you with that question.
Things are still possible.
Like, what are you anticipating, like a child? That's the way I should have worded it. What are you anticipating, like a child, over the next few years that you're going, yeah, I mean, I'm 70, but I'm really anticipating this, just like the giddiness of a child would.
Oh yeah. Well,
I didn't warn you on that one. Sorry.
Yeah, but I guess I another saying that I heard a few years ago, and I thought this is a goal in my life, is I want to die young after living a good number of years. And so that attitude of just, still having fun, spending time with Elise and with my other grandkids, and just helping them to enjoy life and helping them to see the joy of serving the Lord as well. So it's still there. It's the same thing. It's still the same goals that I have. Now it's to the next generation. I figure if I can impact the next generation of my grandkids to serve the Lord faithfully too, then after that it's up to them.
Yeah, that's right.
But if I can do it with 2 generations, then I'll be satisfied.